Good afternoon. This is another segment of the history of running in Memphis. And today I've got Feb Boswell with me. Feb's been around the running scene now since the 80s, I guess, early 80s, early mid-80s.
Late 80s.
Late 80s, that's what I said.
Yeah, that's exactly what I heard.
I was trying to date you up there.
Right.
Feb is with Fleet Feet now. I was showing him a piece I'd found earlier from Breakaway that David Topham, who worked there in those days, had put together on the running scene. But Feb knows a lot of the ins and outs of running in Memphis since that time, and I'll start him off and say, when did you start running?
So I started when I was, I guess I was 12. Grew up in rural Mississippi, and the story you hear from most runners, going to a school with all the big four sports, and I was not a big four sports guy. I was a really skinny kid, tall, lanky, skinny kid, and weren't many options. And so yeah, we had the school decided, actually the school didn't, a new teacher who had run collegiately decided, and ended up at this small town school, decided he was going to start a cross country team. And
wow,
man, that was that. I never looked back. It was, yeah, that was it. Like I was hooked day one. I can still remember actually the first day of practice, and yeah,
really,
it was just the coolest thing ever. Yeah. Like we were just joking about earlier, just one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
The most mundane of activities, the most to me is like, it's like the single most exciting thing in the world. Like I love it. Yeah.
And apparently it stuck.
It stuck, and so that was that. I mean, running, honestly, I can say, that was 30 years ago this month. Or 30 years ago, 12 years old, and it has been the backdrop to basically everything since. I mean, running is not on the periphery; it's in the center of everything I've done for
You ran in high school?
Ran in high school. I at that same small private school. I actually ended up in a weird chain of events, graduating from Briarcrest. So I ran 1 year at Briarcrest, my senior year. And then ran collegiately. Actually, I went to the University of Memphis for 2 weeks. To run there.
Long timer.
Yeah, I really, I put in the work. I'm not getting on the wall over there, that's for sure. No, it just, truth be told, it just absolutely did not work out. I was also quite young, so you make really rash decisions. Obviously, I didn't give it any time to pan out either. But then immediately that next semester, I ended up at Mississippi College. And, Billy Lamb, who was the coach there for years. I went there because of him, actually. He just, awesome guy, great coach. And ended up there, ran collegiately, D2, and then, came back home. And
when did you move to Memphis?
Moved to Memphis when Stacy and my wife and I got married. So 17 years ago, which even though I grew up, it's only 45 miles from Memphis. So so that's why I was always the little kid hanging around at all the road races, and my dad would drive me to Memphis to race. I mean, I did my first road race series in 1990, I think. And my dad and I waking up at like 4 o'clock in the morning for him to drive me to all the races. And so I've been around Memphis running that entire time. Like I've been a part of, joined the track club at that time. I mean, I've always been in this community. So
Were you a Midtowner?
No. You would think I would be. East Memphis. Just geocentrically, it just worked really well for us. For me being at Fleet Feet, I've been there for 20 years. I live a mile and a half from work.
Oh, okay. That's convenient.
My wife, it's always been really convenient for her as well. So maybe it has something to do with growing up where I did and having to commute as much as I had to. As an adult, like I've never had any desire to have to to drive at all. Like I loathe driving. I hate it. So it's like I am gonna my world is definitely it has been constructed around that idea because we do everything within like this this little like 2-mile radius.
So when did you start working at Breakaway?
So I started working at Breakaway when I was 15.
Oh, 15.
Yeah. So
you were commuting to work at Breakaway?
Absolutely, because I worked at Breakaway. It was Breakaway Athletics. It was.
So at 15.
It was the that was like the holy grail.
80.
So. No, 92.
Oh, 92. Okay.
91.
15.
So, David. Coached me. He was my coach, and likewise, like a big brother to me. He was also like my hero. So he was, and he had been coaching me, and I ran for Breakaway's racing team, and it was just, it was that organic. It was just, I'd started hanging around the store, and I would always drive to the Midtown store and hang out there because, Charlie was there, and I wanted to hang out with Charlie, and I wanted to hang out with David. And also at the time, we had Breakaway had 3 locations, and it was Breakaway Athletics, which the name athletics was born out of, European and like British understanding of running and it being athletics. Well, we used to kind of always, at least I always joked, maybe not everyone else did, maybe I shouldn't disclose this now, but the other 2, there was a Bartlett store and a Germantown store, and I would always like, well, those aren't running stores.
Yeah.
Because they carried like this whole
They weren't.
They weren't, yeah.
No, they weren't.
So the Midtown store is right, exactly.
Yeah.
So I would just go and hang out, and then it just evolved into, David going, hey, do you just want to work? Do you want to work here? Like, do you want to, we'd love to have you just come on board. So I would commute to work. I'd work normally because the Germantown store was actually, it was only a 30-minute drive from my parents' house. Right. So normally I got scheduled there, but I would, because David did the schedule, and he would put me in Midtown on Saturdays, so I could go. I could work in the Midtown store.
Run a race.
Generally, I'd go run a race, and then I'd go work, and it was an awesome time. It was a lot of fun.
Were people still living in the upstairs?
No, they weren't. They were not, and there was no one living up there.
All right.
But I used to, just being such a nerd about this stuff. I used to spend hours up there just going through stuff.
Yeah.
Like there was just so much stuff, and I would just, I'm not even kidding, like it would, oh my gosh, I can remember the smell of that. I would just, when I came along, no one was really even bothered, honestly. Like no one even cared. Like everything had been up there untouched for some time, and no one was even looking to, and I don't even know how it happened. I just remember, asking one day, like, so because obviously, just like right there on the west side of the main, there was a stairwell, so it's like, well, what's upstairs? People used to, kind of live up there, itinerant folks, and then other folks would actually live there a little more permanently, and and I was like, oh, that's really cool.
Boo Radley.
We'd all train together. Boo Radley, right? We'd all train together, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. And like, now I think it's just a bunch of junk up there. And one day it was kind of like, well, I just want to go check it out, and man, it was seriously like 15, 16-year-old Feb. It was fantastic. Wow. There were
a treasure.
There were 5 Mile Classic posters from the late 70s. I found just, and even stuff that you would absolutely expect to find in a running specialty store that most people probably wouldn't really care to see, but even old merchandising, stuff, which was just, to me, that was cool. I was just like, oh my gosh, like here's a point of purchase display on the Brooks Chariot from 1982, or whatever, and I'd just be like, oh my goodness, this is so incredible. This is amazing. It was like this running store museum.
Did you find the Ron Hill?
Oh no, I didn't find, and I still, like, to this day. In fact, just yesterday, I had a conversation with a guy, actually an industry guy at one of the at a vendor, a smaller vendor, and we were talking about apparel, and they're incredibly Eurocentric brand, and I was like, look, take this with a grain of salt, but I'm just saying, Ron Hill stirrup pants. I'm just going to leave this right here. That's all I had to contribute to this conversation. Ron Hill stirrup pants.
I still
build it and they will come.
I think Jack Rocket's daughter may still have a huge supply of Ron Hill memorabilia tucked away somewhere. It's my theory.
But we need to, I would I need to get in touch with her.
So I guess all those guys, Jack and Mike and them, had already divested themselves.
Unfortunately, they'd already divested themselves.
Okay.
There was actually, at that point, a sole owner who was not a runner, and that's why there was so.
Right.
So he was astute enough to realize that, like, he had to hang on to the history.
Yeah, well, that's
which was absolutely something. Like, he needed, but he likewise, he saw everything. He wanted to sell everything, and it just, and even the staff in the other stores weren't runners. Like, Midtown was definitely, like, it was run centric. Now David and I, because David was the general manager and he would float around, he would often schedule, like, my shifts in Germantown when he would also be working in Germantown, so at least could hang out with him.
Charlie Wolf, you, David, Marshall Jones, who still is a runner and a master's living in DeSoto County.
One of my favorite folks to work with, and I would get so excited when I had the opportunity, and I probably drove him crazy because I'd ask him so many questions. Taryn Wright. Taryn also worked. He was a Nike employee. He worked at Nike, but he also worked at Breakaway.
That's right.
Yeah. So I used to I love working with Taryn because, like, just, he was just, first of all, one of the just coolest dudes I've ever known. Like, he just exudes, like, this coolness, but obviously his running acumen. Like, I just wanted
Did Rachel work there then?
Rachel did. So Rachel came on after I started with and actually Rachel and I would work together because she would work often in the Bartlett store. Rachel would work out there quite a bit. There was kind of this group of gals that worked out there that were all friends, like, kind of Bartlett running community in the early days of Bartlett running. Like, it was, and so they worked out there. And that's actually how I met my wife. Was she worked at Bartlett at that location because she had been there had been Bartlett Sporting Goods with the name, which was owned by longtime runner David Bartlett. He owned it. That's why it was Bartlett Sporting Goods, but it was also in Bartlett. How about that?
That's
so Breakaway had purchased it, and Stacy was one of the employees that they kept on.
Well, I knew they had several women, and prior to that, I don't think there'd been a woman working at Breakaway. At least I don't remember one.
Yeah, no, right. It definitely was a clubhouse, right?
Yeah,
no doubt about that. I mean, it was definitely a clubhouse.
They didn't really work there.
No, right. Yeah, exactly. At Midtown, there was. Rachel would work in Midtown and Bartlett. She'd work in both, but up until that point, no, I don't know of any female staff. And, like, me being a customer there from the time that I was, started running. Yeah, I don't recall.
And they claim it started in '81. They claim Breakaway first opened their doors in 1981.
Right.
Which means that it was actually there about 2 years before the MRTC was reorganized. I think that was '83, at least in my recollection. I don't look back at my notes, but I think that's about right. So there was Joyner Sports.
Yep.
The running place, which was out on Highland.
Out on Highland, right? Yep.
And Freeman Marr owned that for Marc Edwards to work in, and a couple other people.
Right, that's right. I just know the stories of all this.
Fidippides over on Summer Avenue, which was in the Summer Shopping Center and next to the Mark Twain cafeteria, I believe, if I remember correctly. And I still to this day, someone told me in one of these sessions who those guys were that owned it, and I can't recall them to the day. Fidippides.
Right. Okay. Okay.
I think Barry worked there, Barry Roberson, who's now owner of Breakaway, for a short period.
I know that Barry did. Yeah, that sounds right from what I've heard over the years.
Yeah,
like asking questions about.
And that's what these stories all evolve from. And why we're doing this history, although the history actually the guys I've got on now have come from the 50s. I had some guys from the 50s still running.
So fantastic.
And we missed some. Freeman, who had coached Mike Cody at Southwestern and would finish his duties out in Bartlett as an alderman, and then drive into Southwestern Roads now and coach the team, and often by flashlight. Just because of the passion and fire that running brings some people. Some it doesn't, but and nowadays I think there are more people who are involved in it as a social and a fitness thing rather than as a competitive sport.
Certainly, yeah.
And
the sport has definitely changed.
Topham David was from northern England, I believe, or southern, close enough to Scotland to the point that I have to watch his mouth move to actually understand what he's saying. I just don't have an ear for it.
Can I get you a cuppa?
Sure. Make mine a double. But such a great guy, and we've had big conversations too about the running scene in England and how clubs there encompassed every event to do with track and field, including fell running, which is running the mountain or the big hills there they call them, the fells,
the big hills. It's amazing.
And David, one of the better coaches around, in my opinion, who just doesn't have the time, or didn't, I guess, with young kids who are now old enough now to have moved on. But I wish he would get back into coaching.
Yeah, I'm gonna out him. He's coaching me again. Oh wait, did I say that?
Yeah. I think you did. Really?
No, he is incredible. He is. The sport. I was very fortunate. We'll talk about. I feel like I have to, as far as my story and running is concerned. I have to talk about David just a little bit more. David Topham ending up in Memphis, Tennessee, and ending up in my life and being, just so unbelievably hugely influential, in so many ways. But he was such a great coach. He coached me to, I ran some really quick times in high school, and it's funny because David, he's obviously like so many Brits, he's charismatic, and he's funny, and he's gregarious, and he's everyone wants to be around him, and when it comes to running, he's so insightful, and he's so thoughtful, and so smart. He may not talk in terms like a Ken Cooper would, a scientist.
Okay.
He may, and a lot of coaches try to do so, because it's totally an art. And a lot of that is born out of his coach, which is I still find humor in this today. His coach was one of England's most accomplished coaches, Bill Dance, which is just funny that David ends up in Tennessee, where we
Bill
also
Dance
have a Bill Dance. It's not quite the same, but he just learned everything from him. And and even you mentioning you guys talking about the difference in culture. So even very early on, like David, recognizing that difference, and I actually went over when I was in high school and spent time in England with his family.
Wow.
At David's insistence. He was like, talked to my parents and was like, I know this is a big thing, but I really want, because his whole thing was, he's like, I want Feb to go experience running culture. Like I want, because he loves this so much. Like he has to see this. Like he has to. So yeah, I'm a lifetime member of the Longwood Harriers, the same club as David ran for. And I got to go and I got to experience all of that. And yeah, it was so different. But to me, I've always likened it to what I experienced in England in the early and mid 90s. Running, it was America in the late 70s, like in a lot of ways. Like we never really had the same club system, obviously, because everything here is dictated by school calendars. Don't get me started on that. Right. But especially as a runner, where our seasons and schedules look different than the rest of the globe. But it was so fantastic to experience that and to understand that, and I've carried that with me my entire. I mean, obviously, so David, just like, that guy's he's pretty amazing. He's an incredible guy.
Well, let me ask you about your times.
So
5K.
5K. You know what's funny is I honestly really don't know.
Oh, no.
I mean that in the most sincere way. Like I don't. That's not like a.
We'll make up something.
So no. I ended up running mid-14s in college. Okay. Now in high school, I ran 15 flat.
Right.
I think in high school, I was a cross country runner. Definitely. I mean that's my passion, my love. Guys that I feel like, especially here in the United States, and definitely at that time, track and field is always taken front and center. Track and field actually is running that makes it onto the television, right?
Right.
So it's like most kids are like, so you would always hear, especially distance guys, and it was always like, cross country. I run cross country because that gives me the base and the strength I need to be fast in the spring.
Right.
For me, it was always I only run track because I'm gonna be faster in the fall. I don't.
I think that's
this in itself is not enjoyable to me.
I had a conversation with some kids that are my 17-year-old son's age, and I think it was split about 60-40. 60% of them said, I hate the track.
Right.
I just hate the track.
Wow.
But I'm out there because I hope I get faster in the spring. And the other 40% obviously were like, man, I can't stand that cross country. It's just it's nasty. You're hurt.
Yes, it is. It's.
I can't see the people I'm racing. And that's probably why it's not on TV. It's a start.
Yep.
Okay, we'll take a break here for 14.
We'll finish line's right over there. Is that right? Okay, yeah. I'll walk over there.
So we're going to commercial break now.
That's why I've been so thankful for a couple of folks in town actively pursuing putting on European-style cross-country races.
Which you
circuit
did.
Races where you can
you guys
spectators can watch. Yeah, we really So Ben Cornshield and I really tried with Eurocross. We had really hoped that was gonna, and it just didn't.
It hasn't.
It didn't resonate, but it was so. That course was amazing. By the way,
people who I have talked to that ran it, that ran it seriously,
right?
Loved it.
It was so good. Those steeplechase jumps are out there, like it was perfect.
Angela Redden's son, Jordan, who went to the University of the South at Sewanee and has graduated now.
Right.
He's back in town racing, but he said he loved that course. He liked cross country a lot once he got to college.
Right.
So I think there were adherents. I just think like many things in Memphis, it takes a while for you throw it against the wall and hopefully it sticks in about 10 years. Or 5 years
exactly. And it's
And now with trail ultras and trail racing more attracting more and more people. There may be an opportunity for that. I don't know.
Yeah, there might be.
There's so many races, so it's hard to figure when you could have it on Monday morning at 6.
I mean, right. The calendar is overwhelming, right? Back to what you mentioned earlier, running and the shift, the seismic shift, in what running looks like now. Yeah, the numbers, it's and again, it's I hope. I feel like there is there's rumblings underneath the surface. I feel like people are starting to train again, not just run. I mean, running's just been running for some time now, right? And it's great, and obviously my livelihood is made from people running.
Right.
So I appreciate that. It also breaks my heart because I'm such a purist about the sport and about and competition and training and pushing yourself and
all those
the raw emotion that comes with that and the camaraderie that comes with shared suffering and all those things that that's been missing on a broader
and so you
scale.
think there's an undercurrent of
I think it's
training beginning
I think
again.
it's happening. I think there's and believe it or not, I mean it's from people that I'm talking with, it's not younger generations necessarily that are doing so. It's truth be told, it's a lot of guys and gals my age.
Yeah. They're coming back to it.
That are coming back to that. Kind of going, wait a second, I've spent, thanks to you, ran my first, trail ultra in 1997, and that just I couldn't look back. I mean, I was just like, oh, okay, this is I thought running was cool. This is crazy cool. I can go run in the woods all day and just have to eat food and maybe get so crazy out of my head I hallucinate, whatever. This is awesome. This is so. But even and years of doing that stuff, doing all these long adventures and all this, and now going to be 42 in a couple of weeks. That's kind of why I'm back with David. I suddenly had this wait a second. I kind of want to run fast again. Obviously, I've been training. I've still been pushing myself, but a lot of it also has to do with kind of what trail running looks like now. When you line up at a trail race, I don't necessarily. It's not the same community that it was that I enjoyed so much. Like-minded people. I no longer feel like I'm among like-minded people when I go to a trail event. But
to make that point, the people your age, I'd say from 36 to on up, their families are now old enough where they can step away from child rearing and having to take the kids to school, and that becomes the most foremost thing you can do. You can't train because you've got a soccer game that you're going to take the kids to.
Right.
And so now you're at a point where you can begin to look at some times that you can now work harder.
No, right.
And I think that maybe that's what we're seeing is those people who were competitive anyway want to get back to it, and now they can.
Right. And I think, and throughout, running, I mean, that's why, I mean, for 3 decades, masters running has been that's always a marker, right? And in the life of a runner, if you have that means something. It's tangible. And I think that that's a big part of it. And my wife and I, we had kids late. Our children are young for our ages, but they are old enough where. Yes, life has changed. But that is definitely a factor where I feel more like, hey, you know what? It's everybody's not in diapers and it's not crazy, and we sleep now at night, all those kind of things. I go, wait a second, I can get back into a rhythm of trying to push myself.
Parenting now can be, all right, it's my night, okay.
Right, exactly. No, absolutely.
So it works out too. And when they're really young, it's parenting's for everybody. In fact, the neighborhood, if you want.
Right, exactly. Anyone? Come on over. I know I don't know you, but
Paul Sachs was in a week ago or 2 weeks ago.
Right.
Can't remember. he made the point that, and I've heard this also brought up the other day, that the half marathons have, proliferated in sizes, because people who couldn't ever conceive of themselves running the marathon distance could conceive of themselves training to walk, run, jog a half marathon. He thinks that's going to turn the other way, and that people will begin to see the 10K as the ultimate event, or the building event for further distances. And he sees a real growth and a resurgence of the 10,000 meter race now, and that the half marathon will begin to lose adherence, and they'll either move to the marathon or back. I don't know what basis that's built on, but I can only hope.
So interesting. I think I agree with him. I will say this. So, I'm privy to all kinds of statistics and trends, and I get to see all that, like, very clear and black and white. So half marathon participation has consistently been on the decline for 5 years now. Marathon as well.
Right.
And which the half marathon was, to all your points earlier, that's exactly why it became what it became,
right,
in terms of frequency of races and number of people running those races. 10 kilometers, yeah, I think so. And a couple of, there's probably a whole host of reasons. I think a couple of the main reasons, it still requires some work.
Absolutely.
Okay, it still requires work, and there's accomplishment. But likewise, you can run fast, right? And I do think that I hate to say this, I hesitate to say this, but I think it is an unfortunate reality. I think the world of fitness right now is heavily influencing running.
Oh, absolutely.
Because of all of this, CrossFit, Orange Theory,
Sure.
Iron Tribe, functional fitness, individuals are, people for a long time, like running was running to finish and running to run, and just for the sake of that. And no one wanted to push, no one wanted to hurt, no one wanted to get uncomfortable. And it's, my gosh, it's running. It's the purest of sport. How many people have learned how to suffer at the hands of running? And we completely lost that. And it took fitness to start to show, like, the community at large that, like, hey, you know what? It's okay
Pain pays
to hurt,
off.
and to push yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that is it's influencing that running, because a lot of those individuals running is part of what they're doing.
Yeah, true.
And so, and all of those things they are PB driven, like they're personal best driven activities, because everyone's always trying to, like, okay, well, I did whatever number of reps at whatever in this circuit in this time, I want to get better. Well, then it naturally, running, which they probably never really thought of it that way, they suddenly go, well, wait a second, I want to push myself harder. Like, I no longer want to show up at a 5K because my friends are also doing it, and we kind of run hard, but then it's, they got a cool party afterwards. Like, it suddenly becomes, wait a second, I think I want to run faster. And so all that, 10K, which is never contested, basically. There's that.
Yeah, there is that.
I don't know I have no idea, why there's been this aversion to 10K races for 20 years now, where there's just no 10K races.
It disappeared. And I think, back to that point, I think the evolution was really quick in that 5K was conceivable.
Yep. And whoop,
You know,
Right. And then
you just stepped up.
We just stepped over it. I just went
to the half marathon.
Yeah.
Or and then I could walk part of the. If I was going to do the whole thing, I could walk part of the marathon and still jog in and finish in under 12 hours.
Exactly.
Or cut off 9 hours or whatever.
I know. It's.
And so the 10K since no one. There were none in Memphis for a while.
No, for a while there was nothing.
I'm glad to see. I think there's 1 or 2 now.
It's happening. Yeah.
So it will bring people back, and for the 800-meter guy or girl, or the miler, nobody really wants to run the 5,000 meters. It's a sprint.
Yep.
In comparison.
Exactly. No, right. Exactly.
So with a 10K, you have strategy. It is a fast race.
It's fast, but it's still, it has to unfold.
It has to unfold.
You've got to be patient. You have to let it. You've got to let, that's.
You have to learn to accept it.
No, right. Exactly. And it was just, I was actually yesterday in the shop, and the poor staff, they have to put up with me every day. But I actually, just yesterday, I was making them watch. I made them watch the finish of 78, 79, and 80 world cross champs. Then we skipped to 83 when Lopez won, so I made them watch that. Then I made them, and actually I have to credit Steve Wills actually for starting me down the rabbit hole, because he posted a video on Facebook of John Tracy beating Steve Ovatt in the 5,000 when Ovatt celebrates early and Tracy, which was just fantastic, because Tracy was like this just salt of the earth Irish runner, and Ovatt, of course, was Ovatt. He was.
God, for a short period.
And but he had all the attitude that came with that, so it's just fantastic to watch that finish and just but so it took me on this whole, and it was funny because being a run specialty shop, everyone that works there is a kid, right? And they're all young.
Except for you.
Except for me, yeah. And they were all just like, they're all early to mid 20s, and they were going, why doesn't running look like this anymore? They're like, why doesn't this is amazing. This is so incredible. I was like, I know. I asked myself the same thing. I wish we could, it's obviously all of us. That's human nature. Nostalgia reigns supreme, right? We could never leave who we think we were, or what we think the world looked like, and what
Of course not.
But I so long for running to look like that again. And I don't even know what that means. That's such a nebulous statement.
Well, not really.
But
there've been other people here who've talked about the same thing, and it not precisely like that, but the fact that when you came to the race, I had Tommy Leach and John Mahundro in to talk. They played off each other, although they didn't really compete against one another. I don't think they ever raced but once.
Right.
It fed off them. The passion they had fed each other, and I think that is lacking, and that's where it slipped. And now maybe it's coming back. I hope. I don't run into a lot of people. Young people who have that passion. There are a lot of people who get kids getting into it and part of other things. But I still run into some of the people who have that commonality to them. Let me ask, when did you join Fleet Feet? I'll get off all the subject there.
Oh, right. So, 97.
97?
Yep.
You came in as working with Steve Harris.
Steve Harris, he was the original owner of the store here in Memphis, and
and Eric here?
Eric actually and I worked together. He was also an employee there, so Eric and I worked together. It was basically there were 3 of us, 4, including Steve. There was a young lady named Jill Williams who married one of my dear friends, Matt Joyner. Now Jill Joyner. She worked there. Basically, that was it. That was the staff. And Eric, of course, he left and went to Chicago for a while, and then came back, and he and his wife Robin purchased the store. I'm so terrible with dates. That was 2001, 2, so quite some time. So I've been there. Obviously, here we are talking about running, and I've told you very early on that running's been the backdrop to everything. So yeah, I've likewise been, on the business side of running in the industry, basically likewise my entire life. So,
and I came running in my 30s, and but there were stints when in between jobs I worked for Joyner for a little while, a couple of times I think, and I never worked for Breakaway, I never worked for Fleet Feet, but I was always involved in running. It was always a backdrop to the rest of my life.
Exactly.
Up until the last 15 years ago, when I began to really think in terms of you're getting older, competition, your knees hurt.
Right, that just hurts.
Hurt. But yet, because I found a method now, I can run 3 or 4 days a week without and not worry about the time or the distance I'm running. But I still long for those days when I could go out and hammer 6 miles, thinking about going to the track the next day so I could hammer some quarters or 800s. And it just, and when I start thinking about it, it brings me back to some trail runs I used to have with Guy Yo.
Yes.
Guy would always start talking about races.
And you guys were doing this. This was
that long ago.
Yeah, you guys were doing this well before anyone was.
He would take off in a race, and we would have to chase him to hear the end of the story. How the 800 evolved. In Illinois State or someplace where he'd gone for an indoor meet, But all that, and going to Joyner Sports and sitting there in a little room and talking about it, and when I come to you guys' store, I always feel like I can stand around and talk, as long as anybody wants to talk about running.
I hope so. Right? That's
And I hope that's, and I feel the same way about Breakaway. They still attract, since &81, they still attract a group of people who come in and want to talk about running.
Yes.
They don't care whether they buy anything or you sell them anything, but it's the passion of running, and that's, I think a lot of it. It's been building since the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and into the 90s, and here we are in 2018. I missed a year. And it's still growing. The market, I'm sure you guys are seeing some growth in the market. We see some declines in face-to-face sales.
It's it's obviously the landscape looks
But you still, people come in. They want to, by and large, the runners want to talk about running. And how they get better.
And that's our, and that will never change.
Let's hope so. Knock on wood.
I really as obviously, in running specialty stores, they've been the hub, of activity in communities since mid-70s.
It's a pot-bellied stove.
When it started, like this is, what did you, you're post-collegiate, let's say, or you came to running in your 30s, and where are you going to go and hang out and talk about running, and who's likewise hopefully is going to know where to get you plugged in. They're going to be the resource, and they're involved in the community, and it's I don't think that component will ever die. Will it look different? I think the reality is yes. At some point, unfortunately, brick and mortar, we're already seeing it. There's a lot of attrition, and it breaks my heart. So many running specialty stores are closing their doors. The last 24 months have been just for me the saddest time to see
brutal.
All these iconic stores all over the country closing their doors. Because it's gotten really difficult, but it's still worth every trying second. At least to me, it is. I I really think, I mean, runners want to talk about running, and you know, you can't discount the social component of running. That's been there since day one. I mean, there's you know, it's an individual sport, and it's likewise the most social thing on the planet. Like it's this weird dichotomy of, you know, personal achievement and sharing that with, you know, a group of people. So yeah, it's man, run specialty stores are. You know, I can't travel anywhere in the world without seeking out the local stores and like just going in there, like, and I feel, you know, it's funny. It's like, you know, you can go into any running store in the country, and good or bad, like it can be a great shop, it can be a crap shop. You still know, like you walk in and you go, yeah, this is. Okay.
Yeah, there's a certain. I think when Breakaway moved from their original location,
right,
finding the flavor again has taken some time.
That was
but you walk
such
in
a distinct personality. It was very distinctive, and obviously so. That was just that was
the whole thing.
Yeah.
but going in Fleet Feet and going in Breakaway, they smell like a running. They don't, you know. There's shoes, or maybe it's the whole thing. The shoes. I feel like Mr. Toad in The Wind in the Willows when he sees a horseless carriage.
Right.
Goes,
yes.
A motor car?
Yeah. Exactly.
You know, I see shoes and I'm like, which ones are those?
No, right, exactly.
And so as long as I have that, I find the same thing in bookstores.
I do too.
I go to Burke's Books down on Cooper, and it smells like a bookstore.
It smells like a bookstore.
And I want. That's what I want. I love for the other ones to be successful, but that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. No, I'm the same way. So run shops and bookstores are my two I seek out.
Maybe
like
what we need
I go to every bookstore.
A small little place, house with a front that has a potbelly stove in it and some chairs sitting around and running magazines.
Careful, you're
maybe
talking about you just described heaven.
So, we could get Bud's SL80s over.
I was gonna say, when you mentioned Bud earlier, I was like, hey, you think he's got any SL80s hanging out in the attic?
It's big sizes.
Completely dry rotted. Midsole.
So what? You can always glue something.
They were hard to begin with. It's okay. They're just harder. Yeah.
Anyway, well, I hate to look at the time, but yeah, it's about 3:45. Anything you want to add to this history of running?
You know, for me personally, very personally, I'm thankful that I've been a part of this community. Running communities are in every city, but I really do think there's something really special about the community here, and I think a lot of it, it's dictated by the culture at large in Memphis. I think there's a unique history here. I think there's a lot of stories that need to be heard. Thank you for doing this project.
Oh, and thank the library
thank the library for right. But you mentioning to me, like, just, you know, the whole cast of characters, like others that are involved in this project, and it's you know, running. I think in Memphis, particularly, running has been a vehicle for something larger as well. I really believe that. I really do believe that. And I think running still has the opportunity to be a vehicle for something larger. I don't know exactly what that is, and I think about that almost daily. But I'm just thankful. I'm thankful to have been there, and I'm thankful that, like, right out of the gates, that this kid, you know, this skinny kid from Mississippi who didn't know anyone, and I'll leave you with this, a story. The first that totally sums up kind of how running's always felt to me. So again, growing up, skinny kid, Mississippi, super awkward, super weird. That hasn't changed. Ask anyone that knows me. Just socially inept. I was just a wreck. And it was probably the third or fourth road race I'd done. And lining up, and of course there's like, all the guys, and they're like, Breakaway Athletics racing kit and Wimbledon Sportsplex with the big, those guys and their kits, and everybody's doing strides on the starting line. And this guy comes up to me, and he's got his kit on, and he's skinny and fast, and like he's an older guy. He's an old guy, and he's like, hey man, how are you? And I'm just like, I'm good. And like, man, he just starts talking with me, and like, he's so warm, and just like made me feel, he just, in that moment, I felt like I was the only person in the world. Like he's talking to me so intentionally, and he's listening to me, and we're talking about running, and we run the race, and afterwards, like, he makes it a point to come and find me, and like, how did it go? And I just felt like immediately, like, that one individual made me feel like this, like this is it. Like, this is where I belong. This is who I am, and I remember even as young as I was thinking, like, I hope I'm that guy one day. And it was Marc Edwards.
No kidding.
Yeah. So
Marc has been gone from us since, I guess, the late 1900s, 1990s. I'm sorry, 1990s.
He was quite old when I met him.
Marc was an enormous force, one of the most energetic and high-octane guys I ever met in my life. He never was still. Nothing about him was ever still.
No, nothing.
But yet one of the nicest guys, and could focus on you like a laser beam to see how you were doing, and really ask you and continue to talk to you.
And listened.
He would probably be about Billy Simpson's age, about 60, 62.
He would be. Yeah, he would be now. Yeah, he would be. Yeah. So he was, when I met him, he was early 30s.
Yeah, and they were the bad boys.
They were the bad boys. They were all firing on all cylinders, and and man,
wonderful. That's a great story.
That's Memphis running. Like that, honestly, that's it.
Community is everything.
It is.
It's amazing how well it's done here in town. To me, I've seen it grow from 100 and some odd folks who would show up, and that would be a big crowd at of Joyner Sports, one of his little runs that we would have, to a club now with over 4,000 members in it.
It's crazy.
It's just crazy.
It is.
I now wish I had something I could sell each one of them. But I don't, so there you go. But anyway, thanks, Feb. I appreciate this very much.
Thank you. Always appreciate it.
That's it.